Well, I'm Ben Wright with the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we love doing personal interviews, especially with World War II veterans. And today we're greatly honored to be doing an interview with Father George Palick. And Father George served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, and it's wonderful that we have his story. He was ordained after his military service, so we want to know a little bit about that. But first of all, Father George, you obviously were born before World War II. Do you remember Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I do. I was in high school at the time, and I just, it's not, it didn't play too significant a part in my life at the time. I was at the University of Pennsylvania when Pearl Harbor happened, and from the University of Pennsylvania, after I had completed my freshman year, I enlisted in the Navy. And a good friend of mine, we were classmates in the chemical engineering department, and it was through his influence and through my own friendship with him that I decided on the Navy. And it was for me, it was an excellent choice, because the Navy instituted a program which was entitled the V-12 program. And there was a need for engineers at that time. And I was in the chemical engineering department, so we were just continued in our department. We did a 4-year course in 3 years, and we made up 1 year in 2 summers. So it was a very vigorous training, and then we had, besides the academic work, we also had the military work. The naval classes, we had, especially swimming was high on the list. And then we had what did they call that? The real vigorous obstacle course.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that was what the training consisted of, basically. So basically, we were trained for engineering, which the Navy had need of at the time.
So your Navy training, was it also at the University of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Where you were studying?
Yes. So after the University of Pennsylvania, we were sent up to the United States Midshipman School in New York City, which was at Columbia University. And that was a very vigorous 3-month course. And there we had all types of naval instruction, navigation, and mathematical applications for Navy work. So that was a very vigorous course up there. And then after that, it's in between, while we were up there at Columbia, the atomic bomb was dropped. And very shortly after that, the Japanese surrendered, and the war was over.
Yes, sir. Well, what was your perspective when you heard the news about the...
Well, I was very elated. Yeah, very elated. Because that changed the whole Navy experience, the whole experience of all of us. We didn't have to be concerned about invading Japan. So it was just, and then you know, the whole country was rejoicing. And I remember being down on Times Square at that time, and there was just no end to the joy that the servicemen and everybody just after, I think, was it like 3 years war, 1941 to 45, 46?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, about 4 years of war and all the restrictions that went along with the war. And then, of course, all the families that experienced the loss of men from their family, and then the injuries also were it's good that that was all over.
Well, you
And
bet.
people were rejoicing there.
Yeah, there's lots of iconic photographs about that celebration in Times Square. That's pretty
That's right.
exciting that you were there.
Right.
Yeah, wonderful. So what was next after that?
Well, we got our orders after our 3 months up at Columbia, and my orders read to shore base at Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan. So I think we were given a 2 weeks furlough. So I went home and spent time with my family, and then shipped out from San Francisco for Yokosuka, which was the main naval base in Japan.
Yes, sir.
And my orders read to Yokosuka. And then when I got there, it was a matter of things were still in flux. You know, war was just over, and General MacArthur came to direct the occupation, and so I didn't have a specific billet there at the time, but eventually I wound up in the what they called the flag office. There were amazing 8 admirals that were on the base at the time, and
Pretty top heavy.
yeah, they each one was vying for position. So I wound up being the flag secretary for one of the admirals, and then we had enlisted men acting as office personnel. So we took kind of a correspondence in and out of the base.
Were you an ensign at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the duty was not too strenuous, except it was just so new and just being worked out. So there's nothing definite that was being set up. Well, eventually things leveled out as General MacArthur got his directives directed throughout Japan, and he was the right man for the occupation, to direct the occupation, because he pushed for democracy for the Japanese, and it was not a very military occupation. It was an occupation in which the country was encouraged to grow in the direction of democracy, and the people appreciated that.
Yeah, I would imagine when you first arrived, the Americans would not have been there very long, and so it probably wasn't well established.
That's
so
right.
I'm not surprised they didn't have a lodging place for you immediately when you got off the ship and doing that. Now, you were there, I think you said, for 2 years.
Right.
And did you stay in basically the same position as basically an admiral's secretary?
Yes, that was my job.
For 2 years.
And when I first got there, the living quarters were rather primitive. We had barracks, but the Japanese took care of their officers very well. There were little Japanese cottages on the base, and eventually we were reassigned to one of those living quarters made up of in my cottage we had Lieutenant Commander Caldwell, Commander Weber. We had the chaplain of the base, Father McCoy, and myself. So we had four officers, and then we had 3 houseboys that would take care of meals and the regular household needs for the cottage. So it worked out well eventually.
Well, good. So, of course, Japan at that time was rather devastated. And of course, Yokosuka is right on Tokyo Bay, very close to Tokyo, which was heavily damaged during the war. Was the Yokosuka area also heavily damaged?
Yes. And another issue that was present there was the bombing had really leveled areas of Tokyo. In fact, there was not a single piece of metal like handrails of any kind in all of Tokyo. They were so short of scrap metal, nothing, and everything was just bombed out.
Yes, sir.
And then Yokohama, which was another big city not far from Tokyo, and that too was all bombed out.
Sure.
So Japan was ready to surrender, and the atomic bomb just put the final touches to it.
So, did you enjoy your time there?
Well, what was significant for me in the Navy was the personnel, the comradeship with the other men. They're real fine men that I was fortunate to be with. I lived with those 4 men I mentioned that lived in the cottage there, and in particular, Lieutenant Commander Weber was in charge of the supplies, the Navy supplies on the base, and he was just just a wonderful human being, on top of being an officer. And there were times when men would shy away from saluting officers, but not for him. They go out of their way to salute him. So for me, it was just a great experience to be with a fine man who respected his own work, loved his country, and really loved the men with whom he worked and whom he commanded.
So was your work there, the couple years you were there, did you feel fulfillment in it? Did you feel like you accomplished?
Okay. Yeah, it was not really my, what I worked for. It was more administrative work. But it was okay. I learned a lot from that. My background had been in the engineering field, and I was hoping to get into that, but the war was over, so and on top of that, we had the GI Bill, and that, for me, that was another blessing. And I had the good sense of using that GI Bill. There were many opportunities for work, engineering work after the war, because the engineers in general were in demand, and there were many jobs available. But I had the good sense of going on to Penn State and getting a master's in chemical engineering.
Well, wonderful. Did you have much interaction with the Japanese people while you were there? You had, obviously said you had 3 houseboys.
Yes.
But did you have other contacts or able to kind of get a feel of post-war Japan and how the people felt?
Well, from my own experience, like I would ride up on the railway between Yokosuka and Tokyo, and it was amazing how the one area that was not touched in the bombing was the railway. So that was available to transfer personnel between Yokosuka, Yokohama, and Tokyo. So I was right up on my days of liberty, right up to Tokyo on the railway, and sit right beside Japanese people, the civilians, and I found them in general friendly. I guess one lady just sticks in my mind. She had a little boy there, and they had an orange. They were eating this orange, and I was offered some orange, which I refused because they were so short of food. And along that same issue, on the base at Yokosuka, after every meal, there'd be a group of Japanese come with carts and big pots, and they would take anything left over from our meals for the people in the city. The food was so scarce. So they had a real problem in getting their cities, the area, Yokosuka, Yokohama, and Tokyo, getting settled down to living again in a post-war world. But they eventually did very well, because the Japanese, under MacArthur, moved nicely into to our form of government, and to the way we do things, as compared to the dictatorship that they had beforehand, before the war or during the war.
Well, so most of your time then was shore duty, but you got to obviously be at sea a little bit.
Well, yes, I to and from Japan.
Okay.
But it was just my good fortune and God's providence, the way I see it, that I didn't have to go into with the Navy and the whole military into the invasion of Japan. That would have been horrible.
Yes, sir. So you sailed from San Francisco to Japan on the USS
General Butler.
General Butler. And then where did you go when you left Japan?
Well, I was discharged after that. After Japan, I went get back to the States and just had my discharge orders. I went back home and then arranged for going out to Penn State.
Good. Well, now, we were visiting a little bit before we started the interview. You actually went to Subic Bay in the Philippines?
Yes.
You went on a ship?
Yes. Yes, I forgot to mention there that leaving Japan, we were assigned to amphibious ships. There must have been about 10 or so ships in the convoy. And we took those ships down to Subic Bay for decommissioning.
Okay.
And some of those ships were in sorry shape. I remember we were about halfway down, and our steering mechanism just stopped functioning. And the ship, the landing craft that I was on, just kept going in circles. Wow. So we had to send a man back to the aft end of the ship to steer the ship manually. And eventually we got the ship safely into Subic Bay.
Yeah, that was an LST, landing ship
Yes.
tank. Yeah, so you
Exactly.
got to bounce around on the ocean.
Oh boy, did it! Yeah.
Flat bottom as an amphibious. And then, how long were you in Subic Bay?
I'd say maybe a month or so.
Oh, you were there for a
month? It rained every day. We were there in the rainy season. But it just occurred to me as we were talking here, the personnel on the ship, the LSD, I think the ship I was on was an LSM, and the front end of the ship had a ramp, which was for the unloading of the tanks, and there was an area there that was filled with water, and the men would get down there for swimming. They'd swim around in that for their time off. So it was there was some humor and good times on the ship.
Well, good. Well, did you get to see any of the Philippines? You were in Subic Bay for a month.
Yes.
Did you venture out of Subic Bay to anywhere else?
Not very much. With the rain coming down as it did, stayed more around the barracks.
Sure.
And I remember this too, the only thing that was dry with me was my orders. They were in a leather case, and I had to preserve those.
Oh, yes. Well, good. Now, did you get to interact with the Filipino people then for a fair amount while you were there?
Not really. They had, I remember, they had little, in Subic Bay, around the bay, there were like little nightclubs. Nothing like what we have here, very crude. But there was one, we all laughed, it was called the Do, D-E-W, Do Drop In.
Okay.
Do Drop In. So we just got a big kick out of that.
So did you have any duties while you were there, or you were just
Oh yeah.
basically waiting?
Oh no, not at Subic Bay. No,
Yeah.
we just waited for transportation
Right.
back to San Francisco.
And what ship did you go on from Subic Bay back to San Francisco?
That's a good question. I don't recall. It was a naval transport.
Okay, but it was another troop ship.
Yeah, another troop ship.
Okay, well, good. And that probably took you a couple weeks from Subic Bay to San Francisco?
Yes. I'm trying to think. I think it was wasn't that long. It was about 9 or 10 days.
Okay. Well, then you got your master's at Penn State.
Yeah, I
and,
was.
you know, of course, you shared with us that you had a Navy chaplain, another a Roman Catholic priest,
Yes.
who was one of your cottage mates.
Right.
So somewhere in there, you got a call to ministry, and that you left engineering and elected to go in the ordination process. What maybe you'd like to share with us that faith journey that came with that, and how that affected your naval service?
Well, it's very interesting how God worked that whole thing out. When I got back to the States, I went to Penn State and got my master's there in chemical engineering. And then my employment came from Pittsburgh. There's a company, Knox Construction Company. So I came to Pittsburgh, and it was in Pittsburgh that I met a very wonderful priest. He was a professor. No, he was a diocesan priest first, and he joined eventually the Holy Ghost Fathers at Duquesne, and it was through him, through his inspiration, that I entered the priesthood myself. And eventually I went to Notre Dame and entered the community there, the community of priests there, and I was ordained through the Holy Cross community, the priests that were in charge of Notre Dame. And my first assignment was to teach in Notre Dame High School in Chicago, chemistry, math, and religion. So never realized that I had the talent to teach, and it worked out very well. The first year was very difficult, but after that I taught for 10 years in Chicago, and then I came back to Pittsburgh and joined the transfer to the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and then taught at Sacred Heart High School in Pittsburgh. But at Sacred Heart High School was all girls. Notre Dame High School in Chicago was all boys. And people asked me, well, was there any difference in the teaching? I said, there sure was. I said, the girls would, something went wrong, they'd start crying. And with the boys, I never saw a tear on the boy's cheek. So that was kind of tough, learning how to handle that.
Yeah, emotions are very different. So did you ever do any parish ministry, or
Oh, yes.
what's your ministry? Oh, you did do
Yes,
some parish ministry.
I
after
did,
teaching.
when I was at Sacred Heart Church in Pittsburgh, I was also a assistant, a parochial assistant at the parish.
Okay,
So I did parish work there, along with the high school teaching.
okay, good. Well, it's just been a joy to interview you, Father George. Anything else about your Navy experience that you'd like to share?
I'm trying to think. Well, the big issue was the atomic bomb.
Yes,
That
sir.
changed the whole course of the world at that time, because it was a world war.
Oh, yes.
And that changed our lives for the good, you know, toward a more peaceful existence between nations. And that affected me in my own life as a chemical engineer, and then eventually as a priest and as a teacher, and being involved as a Catholic priest in a peaceful work and promoting peace in our communities.
You worked a lot with high school students. If a high school age student, a young man or young lady, because they take both now into the military,
Okay.
what would you advise them about joining the military? Would you encourage them, or what words of advice would you give if they were going to volunteer for the military?
Well, that's a good question. The military, for me, was very enriching, and it helped me to grow as a human being, as a man. But there's also the risk involved there, because you never can tell what's going to happen. And for young people, as far as advising them, I would advise them to do consultation, to consult with people whom they trust, and then of course to take their faith seriously and pray. And with the two, they'd be able to work it out. And that's what happened with me. That fortunately, my prayer life with my academic life and life in industry certainly helped to me to grow as a human being and as a male, able to do well in my own field.
Well, wonderful. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, the whole issue of faith. See, our society certainly does encourage young people to go into education and to go to college and to get a degree. And that's always, I found, very important for myself. And to grow in the field where you have talent and where you will be happy and be able to make a contribution to your society. And that's where the peace of mind comes from. And to be a person of faith, along with your academic work or your industrial work, whatever field you're in, faith is very important. We need to have courage and ability, to meet the situations in which we find ourselves.
Well, obviously, since you're a World War II veteran, you're a senior citizen, would you like to share your age with us?
Well, right now it's 99, and I'm thankful to God for the ability to reach this age. I've had good health, and being at a dispensation retirement home, it's been over 5 years now. It's been for me, a very good opportunity to grow, to continue growing.
Wonderful.
We have many opportunities here. We have courses, not so much academic courses, but they call them trivia, different areas of our society and of our culture that we talk about and share with each other.
Well, great. Well, we'll look forward to celebrating the 100, which hopefully will be soon.
Okay.
And that'll be a great celebration for you. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today and sharing your story. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your willingness to interview and how important to preserve your story is. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, very good. Well, I appreciate your asking me, and it was a joy to share that with you and with anyone else who may have the opportunity to see this and maybe have some inspiration for their own lives.
I'm sure they will. So thank you,
Okay,
sir.
fine. And is it Dan?
Ben.
Ben.
Yes, sir.
And
Sean,
Sean, thank you very much
thank you.
for your efforts here.
Of course.
You bet.